Then he vanished. Nikolka turned and ran past the sheds to the end of the yard where the back gate should have opened onto Razazaya Street, but as he reached it he was overcome with despair. Done for. I'm too late. Caught. God, even my revolver's useless. In vain he shook the enormous padlocked bolt. There was nothing to be done. As soon as NAI TER's cadets had escaped through the courtyard, the red-bearded janitor had obviously locked the gate giving on to Razazaya Street, and now Nikolka was faced by a completely insurmountable obstacle, an iron wall, smooth and solid from bottom to top. Nikolka leaned around, glanced up at the lowering, overcast sky, and noticed a black fire escape leading all the way up to the roof of the 4-story house. Maybe I could climb up there? He wondered, and at that moment he had a sudden foolish recollection of a colored illustration in a book. Nat Pinkerton in a yellow jacket and a red mask climbing up just the same sort of fire escape. Maybe Nat Pinkerton can do that in America, but suppose I climb up, what then? I'll sit up there on the roof, and by that time the janitor will have called Petliura's troops. He's bound to give me away. He won't forgive me for knocking his teeth in. And so it was. Through the open gateway into Fonerny Street, Nikolka could hear the janitor's desperate shouts for help. In here, and the sound of horses' hoofs. Nikolka realized that Petliura's cavalry must have penetrated the city by a surprise move from the flank, and by now they were as far as Fonerny Street. That's why NAI TERS had shouted his warning. There was no going back along Fonerny Street now. All this flashed through his mind before he found himself, he knew not how, on top of the pile of firewood alongside a lean-to built against the wall of the neighboring house. The ice-covered logs wobbled under his tread as Nikolka scrambled, fell down, tore his breeches, finally reached the top of the wall, looked over it and saw exactly the same kind of courtyard as the one he was in. It was so alike that he even expected to see another red-bearded janitor leap out at him in a sheepskin jerkin. But none did. Feeling a terrible wrench in the region of his stomach and kidneys, Nikolka dropped to the ground, and at that very moment his revolver jerked in his hand and fired a deafening shot. After a moment's amazement, Nikolka said to himself, Of course, the safety catch was on and the shock of my fall released it. I'm in luck. Hell! The gate onto Razazaya Street was shut here too, and locked. That meant climbing over the wall again, but alas there was no convenient pile of firewood in this courtyard. He climbed onto a heap of broken bricks and, like a fly on a wall, started clambering up by sticking the toes of his boots into cracks so small that under normal circumstances a kopeck piece would not have fitted into them. With torn nails and bleeding fingers he clawed his way up the wall. As he lay atop it on his stomach he heard the janitor's voice and the deafening crack of a rifle shot from the first courtyard. In this, the third courtyard, he caught a glimpse of a woman's face distorted with fear, which for a moment stared at him from a second-floor window and then immediately disappeared. Dropping down from the wall he chose a better spot to fall, landing in a snowdrift, but even so the shock jolted his spine and a searing pain shot through his skull. With his head buzzing and spots dancing before his eyes Nikolka picked himself up and made for the gate. Oh joy! Although the gate was locked it presented no problem, being made of wrought iron openwork. Like a fireman Nikolka climbed up to the top, slid over, dropped down and found himself on Razazaya Street. It was utterly deserted. 15 seconds rest to get my breath back, no more, otherwise my heart will crack up, thought Nikolka, gulping down air into his burning lungs. Oh yes, my papers. From his tunic pocket Nikolka pulled out a handful of grubby certificates and identity documents and tore them up, scattering the shreds like snowflakes. Behind him, from the direction of the crossroads where he had left Nai Tours, he heard a burst of machine gun fire, echoed by more machine guns and rifle volleys from ahead, from the heart of the city. This is it. Fighting in the city center. The city's captured. Disaster. Still panting, Nikolka brushed the snow from his clothes with both hands. Should he throw away the revolver? Nai Tours revolver? No, never. He might well succeed in slipping through. After all, Petliura's men couldn't be everywhere at once. Taking a deep breath, and aware that his legs were noticeably weaker and less able to obey him, Nikolka ran along the deserted Razazaya Street and safely reached the next intersection, from which two streets branched off, Lubochitskaya Street leading to Podol and Lvovskaya Street which forked away to the right and to the center of the city. Here he noticed a pool of blood alongside the curbstone, an overturned cart, two abandoned rifles and a blue student's peaked cap. Nikolka threw away his own army-issue fur hat and put on the student's cap. It turned out to be too small and gave him the look of an untidy, raffish civilian, a high school expellee with a limp. Nikolka peered cautiously around the corner and up Lvovskaya Street. At the far end of it he could just make out a scattering of mounted troops with blue badges on their fur hats. Petliura. Some sort of a scuffle was in progress there, and stray shots were whistling through the air, so he turned and made off down Lubochitskaya Street. Here he saw his first sign of normal human life.